Zoe Mitchell took a deep breath as she stood in front of Lincoln High School. The big brick building looked like many other schools she had attended before. This was her first day, and it was already the middle of October. Being new was never easy, but Zoe had done this many times before. Her father was in the military, and their family moved a lot. This was the third high school Zoe had attended in the past 2 years. Each time they moved, she had to start over, make new friends, learn new rules, figure out which students to avoid. Zoe adjusted her backpack and walked up the steps. Her mom had helped her pick out her outfit, dark blue jeans, white sneakers, and her favorite purple sweater. She wanted to look nice but not stand out too much on her first day. Inside, the hallways were crowded with students. Many of them stopped talking when they saw Zoe. She was used to the stares. In most of the schools she had attended, there weren't many black students. This school seemed to be the same. Zoe looked at the piece of paper in her hand. Room 103 was her first class, but she had no idea where that was. The school map they gave her didn't make much sense. Students pushed past her, some giving her curious looks, others not noticing her at all. "You look lost," a voice said from behind her. Zoe turned around to see a girl with curly brown hair and glasses. She was shorter than Zoe and had a friendly smile. "I am," Zoe admitted. "I'm looking for room 103. "That's Ms. Peterson's English class. I'm heading there too," the girl said. "I'm Tina Baker." "Zoe Mitchell. Today's my first day." "I figured," Tina said with a smile. "We don't get many new students, especially not in October. Follow me, I'll show you the way." As they walked through the hallway, Tina pointed out different classrooms and told Zoe about the teachers. Zoe was grateful for the help. Maybe making friends wouldn't be so hard this time. "Don't mind the stares," Tina said quietly. "Everyone is just curious. New students are big news here." Zoe nodded, but she felt there was something Tina wasn't saying. She had been the new kid enough times to know when there was more to the story. They arrived at room 103 just as the bell rang. Miss Peterson was a tall woman with short gray hair. She smiled when Zoe handed her the new student slip. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," Miss Peterson announced. "This is Zoe Mitchell. Please help her feel welcome." 25 pairs of eyes turned to look at Zoe. She gave a small wave and quickly took the empty seat next to Tina. "Now let's continue our discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird," Miss Peterson said. Zoe relaxed a little. They had read this book at her last school, so at least she wouldn't be behind. As Miss Peterson talked about Scout and Atticus Finch, Zoe noticed a group of girls at the back of the class watching her. They whispered to each other and laughed. The blonde girl in the middle seemed to be their leader. She stared at Zoe with cold blue eyes. When class ended, Tina helped Zoe find her locker. "Number 224, Zoe read from her paper. "That's a good spot," Tina said. "Not too far from most of your classes." Zoe tried the combination 3 times before the locker finally opened. Inside, there were a few old stickers and some dust. "What's your next class?" Tina asked. "Biology with Mr. Reed. That's on the 2nd floor. I have math, but I can show you where the biology lab is first." "Thanks. That would be great." As they walked to the stairs, the group of girls from English class passed by. The blonde girl bumped into Zoe's shoulder hard, causing her to drop her books. "Oops, sorry," the girl said in a voice that made it clear she wasn't sorry at all. Her friends laughed as they continued down the hall. Tina helped Zoe pick up her books. "That's Amber Collins and her friends," she said quietly. "They think they run this school." "Every school has them," Zoe said with a sigh. What Tina and the other students didn't know was that Zoe had a secret. When her family started moving around so much, her parents worried about her feeling lost and unstable. So they found one thing that could stay consistent in her life no matter where they lived: martial arts. For the past 7 years, Zoe had trained in kickboxing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She had earned her black belt last summer. Training had given her strength, confidence, and discipline. It was the one constant in her ever-changing life. But Zoe never talked about her training. She didn't show off or brag about it. Her sensei had taught her that fighting was always the last option. The best fight is the one you avoid. he always said. By lunchtime, Zoe had met most of her teachers. Mr. Reed, the biology teacher, was funny and kind. Mrs. Garcia, who taught Spanish, had given Zoe extra worksheets to help her catch up, and Coach Flynn had let her sit out of volleyball practice since she didn't have gym clothes yet. The cafeteria was large and noisy. Zoe got in line and looked at the food options. None of them looked very good, but she was hungry. She chose the least scary option, a turkey sandwich, an apple, and chocolate milk. "Zoe, over here," Tina called from a table near the windows. She was sitting with two other students Zoe hadn't met yet. "This is Carlos and Penny," Tina said as Zoe sat down. "Guys, this is Zoe, she's new." "Hey," Carlos said with a friendly nod. He was tall with dark hair and wore a blue t-shirt with a science joke on it. "Nice to meet you," Penny added. She had bright red hair pulled back in a ponytail and more freckles than Zoe had ever seen on one person. "So where did you move from?" Carlos asked. "Virginia," Zoe said. "Before that it was Texas, and before that Georgia." "Wow, you move a lot," Penny said. "That must be hard." Zoe shrugged. "You get used to it." As they ate, Zoe noticed Amber and her friends at a table across the cafeteria. They kept looking over and laughing. "Don't worry about them," Carlos said, following Zoe's gaze. "They're just mad because you're prettier than they are." Zoe smiled at the compliment, but she wasn't convinced that was the reason. She had dealt with mean girls before, and sometimes there wasn't a logical reason for their behavior. Some people just didn't like seeing someone new come into their territory. The rest of the day went by quickly. In history class, Zoe ended up sitting next to a boy named Ryan, who helped her understand their current project about the Civil War. In math, the teacher gave her a quick test to see if she was caught up, and Zoe was relieved to find out she was actually ahead of this class. After school, Zoe waited outside for her mom to pick her up. Many students were getting on yellow buses or walking home in groups. Some older students drove away in their own cars. "How was your first day?" Mrs. Mitchell asked when Zoe got in the car. "Not bad," Zoe said. "The classes seem good. I already made a few friends." "That's wonderful, honey. I told you it would be okay." Zoe didn't mention Amber and her friends. There was no point in worrying her mom over something that might not be a big deal. Besides, she could handle herself if things got worse. At home, Zoe changed into her training clothes, black pants and a white top. Their new house had a basement, and her dad had already set up a small training area with mats and a punching bag. Zoe spent an hour practicing her forms and working on the bag. The familiar routine calmed her mind and helped her process the events of the day. That night, as she got ready for bed, Zoe thought about her new school. Tina seemed nice, and so did Carlos, Penny, and Ryan. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time she could stay long enough to really make friends. But a part of her knew that Amber and her friends might be trouble. Zoe had seen that look before, the look of someone who decided to dislike you before even knowing you. She hoped she was wrong, but if not, she would be ready. After all, Zoe Mitchell knew how to fight her battles. She just preferred not to have to fight them at all. By the end of her first week at Lincoln High School, Zoe felt like she was starting to fit in. She knew her way around the building now. She didn't have to check her schedule to remember which class came next. Some students even waved to her. In the hallways, Tina had become a good friend. They sat together in English and ate lunch together every day. Carlos and Penny were nice too. Carlos was super smart in science and helped Zoe with her biology homework. Penny was on the track team and had tried to convince Zoe to join. "You look like you'd be fast," Penny had said. "We need more sprinters." Zoe had thanked her but explained that she didn't want to join any teams yet. She didn't tell Penny the real reason, that her family might have to move again soon. Her dad's military assignments usually lasted about a year, sometimes less. There was no point getting too involved. But the problem with Amber Collins and her friends was getting worse, not better. Every day they found new ways to bother Zoe. They whispered when she walked by. They laughed at her answers in class. They accidentally bumped into her in the hallway. Zoe tried to ignore them. That was usually the best approach with bullies. Don't give them the reaction they want and they might get bored and move on. But Amber seemed determined to get a reaction from Zoe. On Monday of her second week, Zoe opened her locker to find her books soaking wet. Someone had poured water all over them, her math homework was ruined, and her history textbook was dripping. "Oh, no," Tina said when she saw the mess. "I bet it was Amber." Zoe took a deep breath. She wasn't going to get angry. That's what they wanted. Instead, she calmly took out the wet books and carried them to the bathroom to dry them with paper towels. In math class, she explained to Mrs. Young what had happened to her homework. Mrs. Young was understanding and gave Zoe an extra day to redo the assignment. But as Zoe returned to her seat, she heard Amber's friend Brittany whisper, "Crybaby." After school, Zoe went to her locker to get her jacket. Amber and 3 of her friends were standing nearby watching her. They were Brittany Ward, Kelly Thompson, and Heather Mason. All 4 girls wore similar outfits, tight jeans, fancy tops, and too much makeup. They looked like they were dressed for a party, not school. "Hey, new girl," Amber called out. "How were your books today? Not too wet, I hope." The other girls laughed. Zoe ignored them and closed her locker. "I'm talking to you," Amber said, stepping closer. "Don't you know it's rude to ignore people?" Zoe turned to face them. "I have nothing to say to you," she said calmly. "Please leave me alone." "Or what?" Heather asked, moving to block Zoe's path. "What are you going to do about it?" Zoe felt her heart beating faster. She didn't want trouble. She never did. But these girls seemed determined to create it. "I just want to go home," Zoe said, trying to step around them. Kelly stuck out her foot and Zoe had to quickly step over it to avoid tripping. The girls laughed again. "Not so graceful, are you?" Amber said. Just then, Mr. Garcia, the Spanish teacher, came around the corner. The girls immediately stopped laughing and pretended to be just standing there talking. "Everything okay here?" Mr. Garcia asked, looking at all 5 girls. "Yes, sir," Zoe said. "I was just leaving." She walked past the girls and headed for the exit. Behind her, she heard Mr. Garcia tell the others not to loiter in the hallways. Outside, Zoe took another deep breath. The cool air felt good. She started walking toward the bus stop, thinking about what had just happened. She couldn't keep avoiding Amber and her friends forever. Sooner or later, things would come to a head. At home, Zoe didn't tell her parents about the problems at school. Her mom was busy unpacking boxes. They still had lots of stuff to organize after the move. Her dad was away on a training exercise and wouldn't be back until the weekend. Instead, Zoe went down to the basement and spent an extra hour training. She worked on the punching bag until her arms were tired. Then she practiced her forms, moving slowly and precisely through each stance and strike. The familiar routine helped calm her mind. That night, Zoe had trouble sleeping. She kept thinking about Amber and her friends. Why had they chosen her as their target? Was it just because she was new, or was it because she was black? It wouldn't be the first time Zoe had faced racism, but it never got easier to deal with. The next day at school, things escalated. When Zoe got to her locker in the morning, someone had written the word "leave" on it with black marker. She looked around, but there was no sign of Amber or her friends. Tina saw the writing and gasped. "That's horrible. We should tell Principal Watson." "No," Zoe said firmly. "That's what they want, to get me upset. I'm not giving them that satisfaction." She took a tissue from her pocket and wiped off as much of the marker as she could. Then she got her books and went to class like nothing had happened. In English, Ms. Peterson assigned group projects. Each group had to create a presentation about a theme from To Kill a Mockingbird. Zoe was put in a group with Tina, Ryan, and, unfortunately, Amber. "Can't I switch groups?" Amber immediately asked Ms. Peterson. "No, Amber, the groups are final," Ms. Peterson said firmly. "This is a chance for you to work with different classmates." Amber glared at Zoe. When they moved their desks together to discuss the project, Amber sat as far from Zoe as possible. "Should focus on the theme of courage," Tina suggested, "like how Atticus defends Tom Robinson even though everyone is against him." "That's a good idea," Ryan agreed. "What do you think, Zoe?" Before Zoe could answer, Amber cut in. "Who cares what? She thinks she's only been here a week. She probably hasn't even read the book." "Actually, I read it at my last school," Zoe said calmly. I think courage is a good theme to focus on. Amber rolled her eyes. Whatever. They spent the rest of the class planning their presentation. Amber barely participated except to disagree with everything Zoe suggested. When the bell rang, Amber was the first one out the door. Sorry about that, Ryan said to Zoe. Amber can be difficult. It's okay, Zoe said. I've dealt with worse. At lunch, Zoe sat with Tina, Carlos, and Penny as usual. They were discussing the upcoming Halloween dance when Amber and her friends walked by their table. Kelly accidentally spilled her soda on Zoe's lunch tray. Oops, so clumsy of me, Kelly said with fake concern. The four girls walked away laughing. Zoe sat very still, looking at her ruined lunch. Soda had splashed on her white shirt too. She could feel anger building inside her, but she kept it under control. Here, you can have half my sandwich, Carlos offered. And my chips, Penny added. Thanks, guys, Zoe said, grateful for their kindness. After school, Zoe had to stay late to work on a makeup test for biology. Mr. Reed let her use his classroom. When she finished, it was almost 5 o'clock. The hallways were empty and quiet. As Zoe walked toward the front exit, she heard voices coming from around the corner. She slowed down, suddenly cautious. I know she's still here, Amber's voice said. Her bus left an hour ago. Maybe she already walked home, another voice. It sounded like Brittany suggested. No, her jacket is still in her locker. I checked, Amber said. She has to come this way to leave. Zoe stopped walking. They were waiting for her. She could turn around and try to find another way out, or she could call her mom to pick her up. But something inside her was tired of running, tired of avoiding conflict. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and continued walking. As she rounded the corner, she saw them. Amber, Brittany, Kelly, and Heather blocking the hallway to the exit. Well, look who's finally done being teacher's pet, Amber said with a smirk. We've been waiting for you, Zoe. Zoe looked at each of them, keeping her expression calm. I need to go home now, she said. Please move aside. The four girls spread out, forming a half circle around Zoe. There was no way past them without physical contact. We think it's time you learned how things work at Lincoln High, Amber said, stepping closer. This is our school, and we decide who's welcome here. Zoe felt her muscles tense, preparing for what might come next. 7 years of martial arts training had taught her to be ready, to be aware of her surroundings, to assess threats. These girls didn't know what they were getting themselves into. But Zoe's sensei had also taught her something else, the importance of restraint. A true fighter avoids fighting whenever possible, he always said. Violence is the last resort. Don't want any trouble, Zoe said firmly. I just want to go home. The hallway was silent except for the soft hum of the lights above. Zoe stood facing the four girls who blocked her path to the exit. Her heart beat faster, but her face remained calm. Years of training had taught her how to control her emotions, especially in dangerous situations. Maybe you didn't hear me, Amber said, stepping even closer to Zoe. We don't want you at our school. I heard you, Zoe replied. Her voice was steady. But I'm not going anywhere. Amber's face turned red with anger. She wasn't used to people standing up to her. You think you're so special, don't you? Coming here with your attitude, making friends with everyone. I'm just trying to get an education, like everyone else, Zoe said. Well, you're about to get a different kind of education, Heather said from Zoe's left side. Zoe noticed that the girls were spreading out, surrounding her. It was a basic strategy. Limit the target's movement, cut off escape routes, but they didn't know that Zoe had been trained to handle multiple opponents. Last chance, Zoe said, looking each girl in the eye. Let me pass and we can all go home. Kelly laughed. Or what? What are you going to do? There are 4 of us and only 1 of you. Zoe remained silent. There was nothing more to say. She shifted her weight slightly, preparing for what was coming. Brittany made the first move. She rushed forward and shoved Zoe hard in the shoulder. Zoe took a small step back but stayed on her feet. Not so tough now, are you? Brittany taunted. Zoe said nothing, She kept her hands loose at her sides, ready but not threatening. Amber nodded to Kelly, who moved in from Zoe's right side. Kelly was taller than the other girls and played on the basketball team. She pulled back her fist and swung at Zoe's face. What happened next happened so fast that none of the girls could really follow it. As Kelly's fist came toward her, Zoe stepped to the side. She caught Kelly's arm and used the girl's own momentum to pull her forward. With a simple twist of her body, Zoe flipped Kelly over her hip. Kelly landed hard on her back on the hallway floor. The impact knocked the wind out of her. She lay there gasping for breath, a look of complete shock on her face. The other 3 girls stared in disbelief. "What the?" Heather started to say. "Like I said," Zoe repeated calmly. "I just want to go home." Amber's surprise quickly turned back to anger. "Get her," she shouted. Heather and Brittany rushed at Zoe from different directions. Zoe dropped into a fighting stance, her movements smooth and practiced. As Heather reached her, Zoe blocked her wild punch with one arm and pushed her away with the other. Heather stumbled backward into the lockers. Brittany grabbed at Zoe's hair, but Zoe ducked under her reach. She caught Brittany's wrist and twisted it just enough to make the girl yelp in pain. With gentle pressure, Zoe guided Brittany to the floor. "Stay down," Zoe told her. "I don't want to hurt you." Amber couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her 3 friends had been taken down in seconds by this new girl. How was that possible? "What are you?" Amber asked, backing away. "I'm a black belt," Zoe said simply. 7 years of training. My dad wanted to make sure I could protect myself. Kelly was still on the floor, trying to catch her breath. Heather was leaning against the lockers, holding her arm where it had hit the metal. Brittany sat on the floor, rubbing her wrist and staring at Zoe with wide eyes. Amber looked at her friends, then back at Zoe. For the first time, there was fear in her eyes, but then her expression hardened again. "You think you're so special with your karate moves," Amber spat, "but you're going to be sorry you ever came to this school." She pulled something from her pocket. It was a small can of pepper spray. "Let's see how good your kung fu is against this," she said with a cruel smile. Zoe felt a flash of real concern. She could defend herself against punches and kicks, but pepper spray was different. If it got in her eyes, she would be helpless. But before Amber could use the spray, a voice rang out in the hallway. "What is going on here?" Everyone turned to see Mr. Garner, the vice principal, walking quickly toward them. He was a tall man with a stern face, and right now he looked angrier than any of them had ever seen him. "Ms. Collins, put that away immediately," he ordered, pointing at the pepper spray in Amber's hand. Amber quickly hid the can behind her back, but it was too late. Mr. Garner had seen it. "All of you to my office, now," he said in a voice that left no room for argument. Kelly slowly got to her feet, still holding her side where she had hit the floor. Brittany stood up too, looking embarrassed. Heather pushed herself away from the lockers. "Mr. Garner, they were waiting for me after my biology test," Zoe explained. "They wouldn't let me leave." "Is that true?" Mr. Garner asked, looking at the other girls. None of them answered. They looked at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at Mr. Garner. "I saw enough to know that something serious was happening here," Mr. Garner said. "And Ms. Collins bringing pepper spray to school is a serious violation of our rules." He took out his phone. "I'm calling all of your parents. This situation needs to be addressed immediately." 30 minutes later, they all sat in chairs outside Principal Watson's office. Mr. Garner had called their parents, and now they were waiting for them to arrive. No one spoke. The tension in the air was thick. Zoe felt a mix of emotions. She was glad she had defended herself, but she was worried about what would happen next. Would she be in trouble for fighting? Would her parents be disappointed? She had used her training to protect herself, but she had also hurt other students, even if she hadn't meant to. Amber sat as far from Zoe as possible. She still looked angry, but there was something else in her expression now. Confusion, maybe even respect. She kept glancing at Zoe when she thought no one was looking. Mrs. Mitchell arrived first. She rushed into the office, her face full of concern. "Zoe, are you okay?" "What happened?" she asked, kneeling in front of her daughter. I'm fine, Mom, Zoe assured her. I'll explain everything. One by one, the other parents arrived. Some looked angry, others looked embarrassed. Mr. Garner led them all into a large conference room where they could talk privately. Principal Watson, a short woman with gray hair and kind eyes, joined them. She listened carefully as Mr. Garner explained what he had seen. Then she asked each girl to tell her side of the story. Kelly, Heather, and Brittany tried to make it sound like it was all just a misunderstanding, but their stories didn't match up. Amber remained silent, her arms crossed over her chest. When it was Zoe's turn to speak, she told the truth. She explained how the girls had been bothering her since her first day, how they had ruined her books and lunch, and how they had waited for her after school. And then what happened? Principal Watson asked. Mr. Garner says he saw Kelly on the floor when he arrived. Zoe looked at her mother, then back at the principal. I defended myself, she said simply. I have a black belt in martial arts. I didn't hurt them. I just stopped them from hurting me. The room was silent for a moment. Then Mrs. Collins, Amber's mother, spoke up. Are we supposed to believe that this one girl took down 3 athletes? She asked skeptically. My daughter is a cheerleader. These girls are on the basketball and volleyball teams. It's true, Mrs. Collins, Mr. Garner said. I saw part of it myself, and I believe I should mention that when I arrived, your daughter was about to use pepper spray on Zoe. Mrs. Collins's face paled. Amber, is that true? She asked, turning to her daughter. For the first time, Amber looked ashamed. She nodded slightly. Where did you even get pepper spray? Her mother demanded. Dad gave it to me, Amber mumbled. For protection. Mrs. Collins closed her eyes and sighed deeply. Principal, Watson looked at all the girls and their parents. This is a very serious situation, she said. Bullying, fighting, bringing weapons to school. These are all violations of our code of conduct. She turned to Amber and her friends. The 4 of you will be suspended for 2 weeks, effective immediately. When you return, you will be on probation for the rest of the semester. Any further incidents will result in expulsion. The girls and their parents looked shocked. Amber started to protest, but her mother silenced her with a look. As for you, Zoe, Principal Watson continued, while I understand you were defending yourself, physical violence is never the answer at Lincoln High. You will have detention for 1 week. Zoe nodded. It seemed fair. She had used her training, but she could have tried harder to find another solution. Can I say something? Kelly asked suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. It wasn't Zoe's fault, Kelly said, surprising everyone. We were waiting to ambush her. We've been awful to her since she got here. And she didn't hurt me. She could have, but she didn't. She just flipped me. I've never seen anything like it. Brittany nodded in agreement. She told us to leave her alone. She gave us a chance to walk away. Principal Watson looked thoughtful. Thank you for your honesty, girls, she said. I'll take that into consideration. After a few more minutes of discussion, the meeting ended. The parents took their daughters home, promising more conversations and consequences at home. The day after the fight, the whole school was talking about what had happened. The story spread quickly, growing more dramatic with each telling. By lunchtime, some students were saying that Zoe had knocked out all 4 girls with karate chops. Others claimed she had learned her moves from secret government training because her dad was a spy. Zoe tried to ignore the whispers and stares as she walked through the hallways. She didn't want to be known as the girl who beat up the bullies. She just wanted to be a normal student. Tina caught up with her before English class. Is it true? She asked, her eyes wide. Did you really flip Kelly over your shoulder? Zoe sighed. Something like that. It's not as exciting as people are making it sound. But you know martial arts, like for real? Yes, Zoe admitted. I've been training since I was 9, but I don't like to talk about it. That's so cool, Tina said. Why didn't you tell me? Because I don't want people to see me as some kind of fighter, Zoe explained. That's not who I am. In English class, Zoe noticed that Ryan was looking at her differently. Even Miss Peterson seemed more careful around her, as if Zoe might suddenly break out into kung fu moves. When it was time to work on their group projects, Amber's seat was empty. She was serving her 2-week suspension along with Heather, Brittany, and Kelly. The class felt calmer without them. "We can still work on our project," Ryan said. "I have Amber's email. We can send her the information." Zoe nodded. Even though Amber had been awful to her, Zoe didn't want her to fail the project. At lunch, more students than usual sat at Zoe's table. Everyone wanted to hear about the fight from Zoe herself, but she didn't like being the center of attention. "Can we talk about something else?" she asked, after answering the same questions for the 5th time. "Like the Halloween dance next week?" Penny nodded eagerly. "Yes, I still need to figure out my costume. What are you going to wear, Zoe?" Zoe was grateful for the change of subject. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe something simple like a witch." After school, Zoe reported to detention. She was the only student there. Mr. Garner sat at the teacher's desk grading papers. "You can work on homework or read quietly," he told her. Zoe took out her math textbook and started on the day's assignment. But after a few minutes, Mr. Garner spoke again. "I want you to know that I saw more of the incident yesterday than I let on," he said. Zoe looked up surprised. "I was coming down the hall and saw the whole thing unfold." Mr. Garner continued. "I saw how they surrounded you, how Brittany pushed you, how Kelly tried to punch you, and I saw how you defended yourself without really hurting any of them." Zoe didn't know what to say. "That was impressive control," Mr. Garner said. "Most people in your situation would have panicked or fought back much harder. My sensei always taught us that the goal of martial arts isn't to hurt others," Zoe explained. "It's to protect yourself and others. The best fighter never has to fight." Mr. Garner nodded. "A wise teaching. I just wanted you to know that I understand you were not the aggressor yesterday." "Then why do I have detention?" Zoe asked. "School policy," Mr. Garner sighed. "Any physical altercation requires consequences for all involved. But between you and me, I think you handled yourself remarkably well." For the rest of the week, Zoe served her detention quietly. She used the time to catch up on homework and reading. Her parents weren't happy about the situation, but they understood. Her dad even seemed a little proud when she told him how she had used her training. "You did exactly what I hoped you would," he told her. "You protected yourself without excess force. That shows real discipline." At home, Zoe continued her daily training. But now she had a new focus. The incident with Amber and her friends had shown her that her skills could be useful in real situations. She wanted to make sure she was prepared, if anything like that happened again. The following Monday, Zoe was surprised to see Kelly back at school. She thought all 4 girls were suspended for 2 weeks. Kelly approached Zoe at her locker. Zoe tensed, not sure what to expect. "Hey," Kelly said awkwardly. "Can we talk?" Zoe nodded cautiously. "Principal Watson reduced my suspension because I told the truth about what happened," Kelly explained. "I have to do community service instead." "Okay," Zoe said, waiting for Kelly to continue. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," Kelly said, looking at the floor. "What we did was really messed up, and I'm sorry we've been so mean to you since you got here." Zoe was surprised by the apology. She hadn't expected any of the girls to admit they were wrong. "Thank you for saying that," Zoe replied. "I accept your apology." Kelly looked relieved. "I also wanted to ask you something," she said. "Those moves you did, could you teach me some of that stuff? For self-defense, I mean." Zoe hadn't expected that either. "You want me to teach you martial arts?" "Just some basics," Kelly said quickly. "Like how to get away if someone grabs you, that kind of thing. My older sister is going to college next year and she's worried about walking around campus alone at night." Zoe thought about it. Teaching Kelly some self-defense moves could be a good way to turn their negative relationship into something positive. "I could show you a few things," Zoe said, "but real training takes time and practice." "That's okay," Kelly said, smiling for the first time. "I'm willing to put in the work." They agreed to meet after school later that week, once Zoe's detention was over. Word spread quickly that Zoe was going to teach Kelly self-defense. Soon, other girls were asking if they could join too. Even some of the boys expressed interest. Friday, Zoe had been approached by at least 20 students who wanted to learn. She felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. "You should start a club," Tina suggested at lunch. "An official school club with permission and everything." "I don't know," Zoe said uncertainly. "I'm not a real instructor." "But you know more than anyone else here," Carlos pointed out. "And you'd have adult supervision. Maybe one of the PE teachers could help." The idea was appealing. Zoe had never considered teaching martial arts before, but she had been training for 7 years. She did know the basics well enough to share them with beginners. After her last detention session, Zoe stayed to talk to Mr. Garner. "What do you think about me starting a self-defense club?" she asked him. Mr. Garner looked thoughtful. "That's an interesting idea. What would you teach?" "Basic techniques," Zoe explained. "How to get away if someone grabs you, how to fall safely, how to block a punch. Nothing that could be dangerous if used incorrectly." "And who would supervise?" "Was hoping a PE teacher might be willing." "Or maybe you?" Zoe added hopefully. Mr. Garner smiled. "I did some boxing in college. I might be able to help. Let me talk to Principal Watson about it." The next day, Mr. Garner found Zoe at lunch. "Principal Watson likes the idea," he told her. "She thinks a self-defense club could be valuable for all students. We can use the small gym on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons." Zoe couldn't believe how quickly it was happening. "Really? We can start next week? If you're ready," Mr. Garner said. "We'll need to create some basic rules and get parent permission forms for everyone who wants to join." Zoe spent the weekend planning what she would teach first. She made lists of techniques, drew diagrams, and practiced explaining moves in simple terms. She wanted to be prepared. On Monday, the school announced the new self-defense club during morning announcements. By lunchtime, 30 students had signed up. Zoe was nervous but excited. "I never expected this much interest," she told Tina as they looked at the sign-up sheet. "Everyone wants to learn from the girl who took down Amber's gang," Tina said with a grin. Zoe rolled her eyes. "That's not the point of the club. It's about safety and confidence, not fighting." "I know," Tina said. "But you have to admit, it's a pretty cool origin story for a club." That afternoon, as Zoe was leaving school, she saw Brittany in the hallway. She had returned from her suspension too. Brittany looked nervous when she saw Zoe, but she didn't run away. "Hi," Brittany said softly. "Hi," Zoe replied. There was an awkward silence. Then Brittany said, "Kelly told me about the self-defense club. It sounds cool." "You're welcome to join," Zoe offered. Brittany looked surprised. "Really? Even after what happened?" "The club is for everyone," Zoe said. "And learning self-defense isn't about hurting others. It's about keeping yourself safe." Brittany nodded. "I'll think about it," she said before walking away. Zoe watched her go, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. Maybe something good would come out of this situation after all. Maybe she could turn an ugly confrontation into an opportunity to help others and bring students together. The first meeting of the self-defense club took place on Tuesday afternoon in the small gym. Zoe arrived early to prepare. She felt nervous. She had never taught anyone before, and now 25 students were coming to learn from her. Mr. Garner helped her roll out mats on the floor. "Don't worry," he told her, noticing her anxiety. "Just teach what you know. Start with the basics." Students began to arrive. Tina and Carlos came first, followed by Penny and Ryan. Then Kelly walked in with 3 other girls from the basketball team. More students followed, some Zoe knew, and others she had never spoken to before. To Zoe's surprise, Brittany showed up, too. She stood near the door looking uncertain until Kelly waved her over. The last person to enter was Heather. She had returned from her suspension that day. Like Brittany, she seemed unsure of her welcome. She stood at the back of the group, arms crossed over her chest. Once everyone had arrived, Zoe stepped to the front of the room. Her heart was beating fast, but she took a deep breath and remembered her sensei's advice. Confidence comes from knowledge. If you know what you're doing, you have nothing to fear. "Welcome to the first meeting of the Self-Defense Club," Zoe said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "Before we start, I want to make something clear. This club isn't about learning to fight. It's about learning to protect yourself and others." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each student. "The best self-defense is awareness, being aware of your surroundings and avoiding dangerous situations. The physical techniques are a last resort, when you have no other option." For the next hour, Zoe taught them the basics: how to stand in a balanced position, how to make a proper fist, how to block a simple punch. She demonstrated each move slowly, then had the students practice in pairs. Mr. Garner walked around, helping students who were struggling. He occasionally added his own advice, but mostly let Zoe lead. By the end of the session, everyone was sweating, but smiling. They had learned just a few simple moves, but they had learned them well. "That was great," Kelly told Zoe as they were cleaning up the mats. "I never knew there was so much to think about in throwing a punch. Or blocking one," Brittany added. She had worked hard during the session, paying close attention to Zoe's instructions. Even Heather approached Zoe before leaving. "Thanks for letting me join," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would want me here." "Like I said, the club is for everyone," Zoe replied. "See you Thursday?" Heather nodded and left. Mr. Garner helped Zoe put away the last of the equipment. "You're a natural teacher," he told her. "The students respect you." "It felt good," Zoe admitted. "Sharing what I know instead of using it to defend myself." The club met again on Thursday, and even more students showed up. Word had spread about how good the first session was. Principal Watson even stopped by to watch for a few minutes. She seemed impressed by what she saw. Over the next few weeks, the Self-Defense Club became one of the most popular activities at Lincoln High. Students from all grades and social groups joined. Zoe taught them with patience and respect, just as her sensei had taught her. Kelly, Brittany, and Heather became regular members. They worked hard and helped newer students learn the moves. The change in their behavior was remarkable. They no longer bullied other students. Instead, they used their popularity to encourage others to join the club. The only one who hadn't returned was Amber. Her suspension was over, but she had chosen to keep her distance from Zoe and the others. Zoe sometimes saw her in the hallways, but Amber always looked away. One day in late November, Zoe was demonstrating a new technique to the club when she noticed someone watching from the doorway. It was Amber. She stood there for a few minutes, then left without saying anything. The next day, Zoe found a note in her locker. It was short and unsigned, but she knew who it was from. "Can we talk? After school in the library?" Zoe wasn't sure what to expect, but she went to the library after her last class. Amber was sitting alone at a table in the back corner. She looked different somehow, less confident, more thoughtful. "Thanks for coming," Amber said as Zoe sat down across from her. "What did you want to talk about?" Zoe asked. Amber took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize," she said. "For everything. The way I treated you was wrong. I was cruel and racist. And just awful." Zoe was surprised by Amber's directness. She hadn't expected such a clear admission. "What made you change your mind?" Zoe asked. "Partly what happened that day in the hallway," Amber admitted, "but also the counseling I had to do during my suspension. It made me think about why I was so angry all the time, why I felt the need to put others down." She looked at her hands on the table. "My parents are getting divorced. My dad moved out last summer. I've been taking it out on everyone around me, especially people who seem strong or happy." "I'm sorry about your parents," Zoe said. "That must be really hard." Amber nodded. "It is, but that's not an excuse for how I behaved." She looked up at Zoe. "I saw your club yesterday. Everyone seems to really like it. You could join," Zoe offered. "If you want to." Amber shook her head. "I don't think I'm ready for that. Too many people I've hurt. But I was wondering, would you be willing to teach me one-on-one? I could pay you." "I don't need payment," Zoe said. "But why do you want to learn?" "Because I need something positive in my life right now," Amber explained. something that requires discipline and focus. And after seeing what you can do, it's impressive. Zoe thought about it. Teaching Amber privately would be a challenge, but it could also be a chance to truly change their relationship. Okay, she agreed. We can start this weekend if you want. My house has a training area in the basement. Amber looked surprised, then grateful. Really? Even after everything? Everyone deserves a second chance, Zoe said. My sensei taught me that too. That weekend, Amber came to Zoe's house for her first private lesson. It was awkward at first, but once they started training, the tension eased. Amber was a quick learner and worked hard. As the weeks passed, Amber continued her private lessons with Zoe. Slowly, a cautious friendship began to form between them. They would never be best friends, but they developed a mutual respect. At school, things had changed dramatically. The self-defense club had created connections between students who might never have spoken to each other otherwise. The atmosphere felt more inclusive, more united. In early December, Mr. Garner approached Zoe after a club session. I have some news, he said. The school board heard about our club and wants to expand it to other schools in the district. They're offering funding for equipment and to pay an official instructor. That's amazing, Zoe said. The other schools will love it. There's more, Mr. Garner continued. They want you to help train students from the other schools to lead their own clubs. You'd be paid as a student instructor. Zoe was stunned. Me? But I'm just a student myself. A student with extraordinary skills both in martial arts and in teaching, Mr. Garner said. Think about it. It's a big opportunity. That night, Zoe talked it over with her parents. Her mom was proud but concerned about the time commitment. Her dad thought it was a wonderful opportunity. There's something else to consider, her dad said. I got news today. My next assignment has been changed. Instead of moving next summer, we'll be staying here for at least 2 more years. Zoe felt a rush of happiness. For once, she wouldn't have to leave just as she was settling in. She could continue what she had started at Lincoln High. The next day, she told Mr. Garner she would accept the position as student instructor. She also announced the news to the self-defense club. That means I'll be around to teach you all the advanced moves, she told them with a smile. Everyone cheered, even Heather and Brittany. After the club meeting, Kelly stayed behind to help clean up. You know, she said to Zoe, it's hard to believe that just a few months ago we were enemies. A lot has changed, Zoe agreed. You changed it, Kelly said. You could have just fought us that day and left it at that. But instead, you created something positive for the whole school. Zoe thought about that as she walked home. When she had first come to Lincoln High, she had been prepared for the usual difficulties of being the new student. She had faced bullying and prejudice, and she had defended herself when necessary. But she had done more than just protect herself. She had found a way to use her skills to help others, to bring people together, to make the school a better place. For the first time, she wasn't just passing through. She was making a difference. As she reached her house, Zoe smiled to herself. Lincoln High was starting to feel like home, and that was the best feeling of all.